Hey everyone, massive welcome to our subscribers, first-time viewers and LinkedIn members to a special one-off special where I'm going to be joined by the founder and lead technical consultant of Atlan Digital, Tom Kallo, for a focus on offensive security. A bit about Tom. Tom was formerly a technical manager in KPMG UK Cyber Defence Services practice, having focused on regulatory-driven threat intelligence-led CBEST and TBEST and FS-STAR engagements in both the UK and Saudi Arabia. And before as founder and principal consultant at Hunnic Cyber, focusing on adversary simulation and source code review in Luxembourg, United Arab Emirates and other regions for the oil and gas, government and other clients. He performed his first CBEST back in 2017 and worked on the world's first TBEST in 2018. And with too many qualifications and certs to mention in this intro, but I'm sure we'll cover those off later in the chat today. He's also developed some tools, Sharp Sniper, Sharp Domain Spray, Fene, and co-developed Sharp ML, developed a proof of concept for achieving RCE using an XSLT injection in Ectron CMS and internal tooling around malware development, defense evasion, red teaming. He's also chief architect of Tural and Malware GAN and is the course instructor and developer of machine learning for red teams training. With extensive experience in the financial services, oil and gas, FMCG, government, space and satellite heavy industry sectors, both on-site and remotely in the UK, France, Germany, UAE, Saudi Arabia, Hungary and Luxembourg. I think you'll all enjoy, wrong word, it's been a long week. I think you'll all agree, a great chance to learn from and engage with one of our industry's top leaders today. But before we bring Tom on, and for those new to the channel, I'm your host, Simon Lindstead, and by sharing stories and best practices over the last few months, it's led to over 175,000 views here on YouTube by you, our amazing 8,924 subscribers. Before we move on, just bring this up quickly. This has all come from the amazing InfoSec Live community founded back in 2021. We've got 6,000 global members collaborating with study groups, mentor sessions and regular networking events to help you raise your game in cybersecurity, no matter what stage you are in your career. So make sure you check the community out if you haven't already. If you already work in the industry and think, I'm not scanning that QR code, I understand that. There is a link in the chat. I can assure you it's safe, but if you don't want to scan it, there's a link in the chat for the website as well. And again, if you'd like to support the wider InfoSec Live community or just buy me a cheeky decaf coffee, we do have a way you can show your appreciation right here on our channel with 3 tiers of membership, allowing you to show your support in any way that you can. But whether you join or not, being here and engaging with it is what really matters. So if you're watching it live, hit that bell. Make sure you subscribe to be notified of future content. And as you know, each and every one of our live shows gives you, our audience, the chance to engage with our guests. So make sure you get any questions ready in the chat. Okay, time for me to stop running on. Let's bring Tom on. Good afternoon.
Hi guys.
Welcome. Thanks for taking the time to come on.
Introducing me, Simon.
It's all right. I couldn't do all of your certificates and qualifications because we'd have only had about three minutes left to chat.
Sorry?
I said we'd have only had about 3 minutes left to chat because you've achieved so much over the last few years. It would have just been me talking about what you've achieved without bringing you on. So I thought I'd let you tell our audience a bit more in depth about your experience, Tom.
Yeah, well, thanks for that, Simon. There's lots of guys in the industry who've done a lot more, but yeah, I've had a career in the industry. So I think maybe best just to say how I started. So I had a kind of entire life before cybersecurity, but I started at Sensepost. I'd been doing numerous other kind of work before cyber that gave me kind of a somewhat knowledge in the technical domains. A lot of it self-directed, and I wanted to break into the industry, but I didn't have a degree. And so I wrote to one company, which was Sensepost, around an internship, and then never heard back. And so I applied to different jobs within the business. So sales was my background, and then Rod, who's a amazing human being, him and James interviewed me, and I kind of started in sales there, and then after about 6 months, then moved across to learning pen testing. He threw me in the OSCP. Obviously, this was well before you had kind of things like Hack the Box.
Yeah.
And there was something called Vuln Hub where you download vulnerable machines, and
Yeah,
so
I've used it.
Yeah, exactly. Did that, and it's all thanks to all of the team members there that I kind of learned and had a lot of pain with that exam. And then from there, I kind of moved, did a bit at Sensepost, didn't do too much there, and then moved across to KPMG. Some reasons behind that, I kind of personal reasons, and then was at KPMG. Another amazing team, had some, really, really amazing professionals there. Obviously, the leadership at the time, all you need to do is look them up. They're some of the guys who pretty much, wrote what this industry is about. And the person who was the senior manager there, Conrad's at the time, I worked a lot with him. And then that was kind of, I kind of was lucky to come at a period where CDS was Cyber Defense Services was, it was getting more into red teaming. So I got to kind of see how red teaming was built up from scratch on a kind of technical level. And we did a lot there. We did a lot, and it was very good fun. And a lot of those guys have become some of my very best friends in the world. I mean, even today I was chatting to Conrad. Obviously, he's on the other side of it. I'm not saying he's one of the very best, but they're amazing human beings, and they were very, very how should I say, tolerant with me, because I used to, yeah. And then
No such thing as a stupid question, though, Tom. Right? That's what I keep getting told.
Yeah, I think mine wasn't so much stupid questions, but it was how I behaved, because I used to be a bit sort of naughtier. But so they were very tolerant, and they were very kind, very supportive. There's a lot of people in the industry who have this like impression that the big consulting firms can't, a cutthroat. That's in my entire time in the industry, some of the most compassionate moments and support I've received on a human level have come from that team. So I'd if you're a junior and you're thinking, oh, I don't want to go and work in one of these big firms, because you don't actually, it's always, my view is how you present is what you get back. And if you work hard and if you do things right, you'll find there's some amazing human beings all over the industry, and people who will support and push you forward. And even when I left, to go and start my own company, my mom had died and things changed, so I wanted to leave. Even then, they wanted to, they were pushing me ahead. So I think, there's great people out there everywhere, and that there's always pockets of people who think maybe in this unit there or there's not going to be what you find. But I've had the fortune to work in small boutiques and contract and big consulting firms, and there's great opportunities in all of these places if you kind of do work hard and so that's
Would you say that working for the likes of KPMG, though, and working for your own startup and small consultancies, you have to wear a lot of different hats in the smaller organizations?
I think it depends. I mean, my times at KPMG, I was just kind of very technically focused, and they kind of spared me from doing much any of that stuff. I mean, that was partly kind of for other reasons too. But then obviously when you do your own company, then you're doing a lot of, especially, At the beginning, you're doing a huge amount yourself, well, everything yourself, you know. And then it's different in every kind of firm, because there'll be, I kind of do see that the KPMG model is, you know, there's my view is 5% of the, you know, top performers are phenomenal, and they'll be doing so much it would make your head spin. You know, right down to the like very lowest depths in terms of technical work. But I remember there's like, we used to talk about this in the team, but our senior manager, Conrad's at the time, he's now a director in Singapore. He had a phone in his thing like this, and he was talking to a global CISO, and then he was tapping, and he'd talk to the other team and say, just got domain admin, and he'd find, you know, so there's some like remarkable characters there who take this forward. So there's, you know, and then obviously in the small company side of things, you have, so I think it's different strokes for different kind of people. Some people enjoy that nature. I think you should try and get a bit of everything. So yeah.
Thanks, Tom.
And also I'd say that, you know, you can work in a small, very technical boutique, but owing to how some of the very largest firms in the world work, I don't think you work for huge, vast firms, but if you've got something like a giant like KPMG, they'll get the kind of Vanguards and the BlackRocks and the this, that, and the other, and that will kind of, and they also have the kind of the people who are managing these engagements right at the top with the other, you know, are able to sell these very long red teams, you know, 6-month red team engagements and stuff. So you really do get challenged. Maybe there's not as much hand holding as you might get in a boutique, but I just feel very lucky that these various firms took a chance on me and taught me a lot. So I'm very grateful.
Absolutely. Going back actually, so you talked about previous careers and you mentioned that you were in sales before. So a couple of points around that. There's a lot of people watching, I can see from the names in the chat, who are trying to break into the offensive security domain at the moment. You mentioned it. One of the first things you said was that you were looking at getting into the industry, but you didn't have a degree. Well, that's not changed much by the looks of it. But two questions. First one, what kind of sales were you in? Because I'm interested, because that's all I've ever really done. And secondly, what of those skills did you use to transition, or were there any of those skills from your sales experience that you've used to transition into this industry?
Well, I think there's multiple, because obviously, you know, I think job adverts are a waste of time if you're trying to break in where you don't have, you know, the qualifications. And people skills, people like working with people. So I think, you know, knocking down doors and you know, getting in touch with hiring managers, but also I think, like I had built a kind of e-commerce platform, so maybe that showed some technical capability and things of that nature. But I do think that for me, of all of the different areas I've kind of been into dealer broking for a short period of time. My uncle's, you know, in Hungary. I live in Budapest, but my uncles are in kind of waste management, so I know things around that kind of area. I've worked in recruitment very early on, you know, started a recruitment startup in 2010, you know, mining recruit. So done numerous things. And the reason why I became interested technically is because I kept doing these startups, and, you know, 2010, there wasn't that much. You couldn't just go on to Fiverr.com and get, and there wasn't things like website builders. And if you're a sales guy,
you couldn't go on GoDaddy and build one afternoon. You had to learn
and
WordPress.
You had to buy the SSL certificate yourself and everything. So I started learning these skills, and then I was like, oh, I quite enjoy doing this website, you know, and eventually picked up. And I was surprised I knew kind of more than I thought by the time I came to the OSCP, if that makes sense. Because
it was the other way around for me. I thought I knew more than I did when I got to the OSCP.
I mean, you know, so I was operated on very kind of low resources to make things happen, in terms of back in the, you know, these startups I tried. And so I kind of figured out, you know, I learned some skills. Obviously, there's a huge amount of guys out there who go through, you know, very advanced degrees and everything. So I'm not going to make that comparison. But there was,
Well,
you'd
you
have
said it
got
earlier, different strokes for different folks. That formal kind of education
exactly.
process
I think
works
there's
for a
a
lot of
way in
people.
for lots and lots of people.
Yeah. Shall we,
Lots of
while we're on that, shall we just, because I'm conscious of time, we've only got 15 minutes left, and I want to focus on everything you've achieved since you've been in the industry, because there's so much of that to talk about. But before we do that, as we were talking about you breaking in, there's a few questions that people have dropped in. So I'm going to move you up to the top so it doesn't cut you in half and bring them up on the screen quickly. First one is this one. If you could turn back time, would you take a different route into the industry?
Oh, I mean, that's a good question. I've enjoyed, I definitely like get rid of some of the mistakes I made along the way. I'd change
Wouldn't we
that.
all?
But yeah, I personally think, because we've got kind of someone I've trained, and he's done a maths degree and a computer science degree at the same time remotely, and worked with me. And the ability and speed at which he can pick up the concept. So for me, it took me quite a lot of years to kind of, understand computer science,
Yeah.
So I do think really understanding that would have been something I would have done at the beginning if that's what I wanted to, So I don't know if going for a kind of like an ethical hacking degree is what I'd have done. I'd probably have tried to have gone for a real, as much science-based approach to computer science as I possibly could, to really understand that. That's my view, at least. I think that I would, but I didn't go to university. I think that's something, and something also with a fair amount of maths in it, because now machine learning is coming on and is on the scene in a big way. So those kind of real kind of deep understanding of the entire OSI model and everything, and how. So I'd do something like that.
Okay, thanks, Tom. I mean, you just mentioned machine learning, so I'm going to bring this question up next because it might relate to your answer. What technology or advancements, trends do you have your eye on?
Generally, or just inside,
Well, I don't know what the person asking the question meant, but for me, generally, would be good.
Yeah, so I'll answer that in terms of cyber. So I think that my view is a lot of the malware research that has been done over the last, let's say, 20, 30 years and opera, which is kind of, I think it's been based on a type of machine learning that was good at kind of zoning in on anomalies. And I think that the next kind of wave of that is going to be a much more kind of this kind of deep learning approach. I mean, my personal view, and maybe I'm wrong about this, but I said this 2 years ago, is I think Google bought Mandiant not for their consulting team, but to access all of their data from all of these incident response engagements. And I think, if you look at Microsoft's approach, isn't really deep learning. It's more this kind of classification, clustering type approach, this kind of classical machine learning. I think Google are working, I think, probably to, apply, because you do see more of these EDR models and deep learning coming in a way, but the kind of relative approach that you need to take is slightly different. So I think that's something I'm keeping my eye on. And I mean, I do read into other areas. I think neuromorphic engineering is very interesting. So looking at how different computer architectures are going to come out, that's not the kind of von Neumann model, and things like chemical computing. These are interesting. So I think if there's at some point going to be kind of a different computing paradigm, I don't necessarily think it's purely going to be quantum computing, but you'll probably see a mixture of things coming out at different times, and whatever wins out. But a lot of these things are what has the most amount of resources pummeled into them. So that's areas that I read. And I also think it's very interesting to look at machine learning optimization. If you look at Sam Altman, who's asked for $7 trillion, I think, a more kind of reasonable approach would be how can you take these vast models and kind of reduce the actual kilowatts required to run them, and the kind of like optimizations that you'll find there at all kind of levels further down, all the way down to, in memory. So these kind of things I do read about.
And what about generally anything out there in the world, technologically or scientifically, that you're interested in? I'll give you my example. So I'm 50 this year. So for me, it's the advancements in gene editing in the hope that they can fix me in about 10 years
from
time.
like personally, like geothermal energy. So I started a think tank around that. And if I've been reading, somewhat involved in this for 10 years and more actively for the last couple of years, but I believe the next 20 years are going to be dictated by geothermal energy, and that's going to radically shift political geopolitics around. Oil came and it made Saudi Arabia and it made this. So I think Turkey, Chile, Hungary, and these kind of countries are going to benefit from a new kind of. So that's something I do less of now because we try to get funding, but
Yeah. That's very interesting. Thank you, Tom. Next question then, before we move on to what you've been working on the last few years. And I'm going to bring up another one of Jamie's, actually, because it's a good one. If I was a 20-year-old Tom Kallo, who says he isn't 20, what one piece of advice would you give?
If I was 20 years old?
Yeah, what would you? I think if you were 20, or if you could give your 20-year-old self some advice now, what would it be?
My 20-year-old self shouldn't be giving anyone advice.
Mine neither.
Yeah.
But what advice would you give? So if you met Tom Kallo at 20 now?
Almost certainly, because my parents are dead, my grandparents are dead, I've had lots of friends die. Not everything is about career. Nothing is about money. Not everything is about who and what thinks of you. No one is going to care, long term. Build your life and focus on things that are interesting to you. Because I've had a lot of things come and go, and career is one thing. But if you have parents, call them every day. If you have animals, spend time with them, children, and these kind of things. Because long term, these are far more valuable than any kind of intellectual accolade you might be able to get. That's my view.
You very nearly brought a tear to my eye saying that, because it's so close to my own feelings on life. Luckily, I've spoken to you off air before.
Yeah.
I know that you didn't quite have to destroy yourself as much as I did to work that out. So I'm pleased for you, Tom. But it's definitely, maybe it's a maturity thing as well. Getting older, we suddenly realise. And I think, like you said, people dying as you get older as well starts to put things into context of what actually is important, and how, I suppose, our most important commodity that we have is time. And we don't have very much of that. So choose it wisely where you spend it, I think. Okay, let's get rid of the questions. I want to dig into, so in your intro, I talked about you developing lots of things. Sharp Sniper, Sharp Domain Spray, for example. Talk to me about how this has all come about, and talk to me about the projects that you've been working on.
I mean, Sharp Sniper was a very kind of small tool. We'd worked on a red team against the telecommunications business, and it's just for finding users in domains once you've got domain admin accounts. So obviously, like some red teams, you got DA, fine, but if you're doing a kind of goal orientated red team and you need to find specific users. And during that red team, I remember Conrad said, "Can you find this out?" And at that time, a lot of the tradecraft was PowerShell, and then later, just put it together in C#, and then these kind of tools that just some TTPs that were quick to put together. And most of the kind of more interesting tooling has been under the cover, so to speak, inside teams, like malware generation. And that kind of led me to malware GAM, which is something that we started putting together in 2019, 2020 at Hunnic Cyber. But then, to cut a long story short, that business ended very badly and everything I owned was stolen. Anyway, rebuilt that. And then Turul is kind of, it's named after the Hungarian mythological bird, but it's essentially, working against machine learning by, there's three components to it. One that we've spoken about to some, people in the industry around, if you look up something like TLSH scores and how you can essentially make your binaries polymorphic by changing the similarity between them, but then also doing things that that don't, basically acting in a different way, so that the machine learning model at that kind of level can't necessarily correlate your behavior. So it does a few things. So we've been working on through, and our plan is to try and kind of make it easier for lots and lots of other red teams out there to much cheaper than these kind of Cobalt Strike and Nighthawk type tools, get that level of capability without the need to kind of generate an implant. Then you need to do a loader, then you need to encrypt in memory and all of these things, but kind of point and click and have advanced capability for less of the price. And then the other stuff we're doing for other clients around actually doing that at the opcode level and against XDRs. And so that's the R&D stuff that we're doing. So that yeah.
It keeps you busy, I would have thought, by the sounds of it, Tom.
Yeah. I also have 2 dogs, 2 huskies, which keep me busy. I woke
beautiful.
up at 5:45. Well, he started barking as soon as I said that. I woke up at 5:45 this morning and took them for a 3-hour walk, 14 kilometers before the even day started. So
they need their exercise. A friend of mine's got 3 huskies. They're beautiful dogs. We lost our bull mastiff back in September. No, back in November. Yeah, you're right. No worries. Love it.
Sorry. Apologies.
No worries.
I mentioned him when he came in.
Yeah, he heard you. We lost our mastiff back end of last year, and we went to Battersea Dogs Home and got a puppy. And we've got she's now 5 months old. She's a mix between a Cane Corso and a mastiff. So she's already the size of a small horse at 5 months old. So it's
big dogs, yeah.
No, another question here. I'm conscious we've got about a minute or 2 left. One more question. To what extent do you believe AI will take over red teaming operations, and how should current red teamers adapt to the inevitable integration of AI into red team toolkits such as Cobalt Strike?
So I think that the 2 things I believe that will happen very quickly is, one, kind of a more interactive Cobalt Strike, probably, where some form of LLMs will be placed in. So you could probably get that to do some basic stuff more autonomously. And then I think things like speeding up the generation of implants and kind of changing, more and more people in the industry are, whether they're doing it with LLVM obfuscation or whatever, or if you look at RTech in Germany, they've built a command and control framework where the implants shift and change every time. So that's part of what we do at Toodle. So I think it improves speed in terms of generating implants, some speed in terms of interactivity, and also, all of the kind of deep fake stuff that's happening. I don't know if you read the, 25 million that was stolen, where they had,
off the video call.
I think there's going to be interesting new kind of capabilities that will speed things up, and also, things like landing in inboxes. I think spam filters are going to get much smarter. Obviously, I think it's definitely something. I don't think you need to go and do a masters in machine learning or a BSc, but there's a lot of kind of boot camp courses, or even pick up books and do these things. Or go to one of the big platforms who might have kind of like a machine learning course. So that's something definitely to stay in mind. And it doesn't mean you need to be able to develop production grade machine learning software, but an understanding of how this works and why it works in such a way allows you to kind of tailor your attacks in a way that is mindful of what that humming box in Microsoft is doing when you're trying to push something in.
That's a very good point. Thank you. We're pretty much out of time, so I've got one more question for you. It's kind of a finish off statement from Tom, and I'm looking for some advice for those who are looking to break in to offensive security. What would your words of wisdom be for them?
Mine would be, get passionate, and then your passion will lead you. So whichever part of cybersecurity you are actually passionate about, then your soul, your endeavor will take you there, because then time goes out the window when you're doing it. You're enjoying it, and if you find that enjoyment from it, then the kind of dopamine reward system will do the rest.
100%. And once you found your passion, you never do a day's work again in your life, I think is what they
Correct.
say, isn't it? Yeah.
Correct.
One more thing, if it's okay with you, I'm going to drop your LinkedIn profile in the chat here if people want to connect.
Sure.
Is that okay? And I
Yeah.
did notice on your profile on LinkedIn that you've got a big banner on there that says you're hiring. What are you looking for at the moment?
At the moment, kind of it's around product and development and things of those nature, because we've done a lot of the R&D work, but it's now getting it to production grade so that we can kind of push it out to you know, essentially the clients we envisage who want this kind of lower tier tool. So it's an area that I don't have huge experience of, because it's now becoming, you know, kind of building a SaaS platform. So those are the way we do it. But, you know, all of our consultants, we actually have a policy at Atlan that no one can put up on LinkedIn that they're associated with it, but for various kind of security reasons. But yeah, that's what we're hiring.
And if people are interested in finding out more, reach out to you on LinkedIn or go to the company website, Atlan Digital.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Drop me an email or anything of that nature. All right.
Perfect. Tom, thank you so
Simon.
much. I'm gonna let you go and let the dog out. My dog's barking downstairs as well. I don't know if you can hear it, so I'm gonna go and do the same. Thank you for your time. Thank you to everyone who tuned in. See you back in the studio next week. And again, take care. Have a great weekend.
Cheers.
Thanks
Thank
all.
you. Thanks, guys.
Cheers, Tom.
Bye.
Bye.